The iron collar dug into Noura's neck, the rough metal edges made slick with blood that trickled down her collarbone. Each step sent a fresh shock of pain radiating from her recently lashed back, but she forced herself forward through the misty bog, her bare feet sinking into cold mud with every step. The night air carried the distant howls of hounds. The overseers had noticed her absence by now. 3 years she had endured Master Caldwell's plantation. 3 years of picking cotton until her fingers bled, of scrubbing floors on raw knees, of dodging the overseer's whip and the master's wandering hands. 3 years of watching others try to escape, only to be dragged back and made examples of. But something in her had finally broken when she'd witnessed young Isaiah's hanging that morning. A boy, no more than 14, whose only crime was teaching himself to read. The mist thickened around her as she pushed deeper into the swampland that bordered the plantation's southern edge. Local folk avoided these wetlands, claiming they were haunted by restless spirits and creatures that fed on human flesh. The slaves whispered of an old woman named Mama Juba who lived somewhere in these forbidden marshes, a woman who practiced the old magic and could hide fugitives from their pursuers. Noura had nothing but desperate hope to guide her. Her threadbare dress clung to her skin, soaked through with sweat and bog water. The sounds of pursuit grew fainter behind her. Even the most zealous overseers feared to venture too deep into the swamp at night. A flicker of movement caught her eye. Something pale darted through the cypress trees to her right. Noura froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. The mist parted briefly, revealing a man, no, something that only resembled a man, crouched by a pool of stagnant water. His skin was as white as bone china, his black hair falling in tangled waves past his shoulders. He wore the tattered remains of what must have once been fine clothing, a gentleman's attire now reduced to mud-caked rags. When he turned toward her, Noura's breath caught in her throat. His eyes reflected the meager moonlight like a predator's, and dark blood stained his mouth and chin. At his feet lay the lifeless body of a marsh hare, its throat torn open. The creature hissed, exposing fangs where human canines should be. But there was something else in his expression beyond hunger or threat, pure, unadulterated agony. He clutched at his side, where a wooden stake protruded from between his ribs, the wound around it blackened and festering. Before Noura could run, the creature collapsed, his body convulsing as he clawed at the stake. A sound escaped him, not the growl of a predator, but the whimper of a dying animal. "Please," he rasped, his accent strange and foreign to her ears. "End this torment. Finish what they started." Noura should have fled. Everything she'd ever been taught by both plantation Christianity and the whispered old beliefs told her this was a demon, a monster that deserved no mercy. Yet something held her in place, perhaps the same reckless desperation that had driven her into the swamp in the first place. "What are you?" she whispered, though she already knew the answer from Mama Corinne's fireside tales. "Vampire, blood drinker, soul stealer." "Does it matter what name you give me?" He coughed, black blood spattering his lips. "I am dying either way." The distant baying of hounds returned, closer now. Noura glanced over her shoulder. She couldn't go back, and she couldn't stay here in the open marsh. "Can you walk?" she asked, surprising herself with the question. The creature looked at her with bewilderment. "You would help me." "I need somewhere to hide," Noura said pragmatically. "And you need shelter before sunrise, yes? The stories say your kind burn in daylight." A bitter laugh escaped him. The stories are true enough. With considerable effort, Noura helped the creature to his feet. He was unnaturally light for his height, as though hollowed out from within. Together they stumbled deeper into the swamp, the vampire leaning heavily against her shoulder, his body radiating an unsettling coldness that seeped through her wet clothing. After what seemed like hours of halting progress, they came upon a dilapidated structure nestled between 3 ancient cypress trees, a small hut built of mud, moss, and salvaged wood. Smoke curled from a crooked chimney, and the windows glowed with faint candlelight. "Mama Juba," Noura breathed, hope flaring in her chest. But when they reached the door, they found it hanging open on broken hinges. Inside, furniture lay overturned, herbs and strange artifacts scattered across the dirt floor. In the center of the one-room dwelling lay the body of an elderly woman, her throat torn open in a manner disturbingly similar to the marsh hare Noura had seen earlier. The vampire recoiled. "This was not my doing." Noura looked at him skeptically, eyeing the blood still staining his mouth. "I feed on animals when I must," he said, following her gaze and wiping his lips with what remained of his sleeve. "I have not taken a human life in a very long time." The hounds bayed again, their voices alarmingly close. "We cannot stay here," the vampire said. Noura knelt beside the old woman's body, grief washing over her for this stranger who had represented her only hope of freedom. "We have nowhere else to go." The creature was silent for a moment, his strange eyes scanning the hut. "There!" He pointed to a rough trapdoor, nearly hidden beneath a woven rug. "Below!" Noura pulled back the rug and heaved the trapdoor open, revealing a narrow earthen cellar dug beneath the hut. It was barely large enough for two people, lined with clay jars of preserved foods and bundles of dried herbs. "Help me with her first," Noura said, indicating Mama Juba's body. "We cannot leave her for the dogs." The vampire looked as though he might argue, but then nodded. Together, they carried the old woman's body outside and laid her beneath the roots of the largest cypress. Noura whispered a prayer, half-remembered words from Africa her grandmother had taught her, mixed with Christian verses she'd heard in the plantation's Sunday services. When they returned to the hut, the sounds of pursuit had grown alarmingly close. They slipped into the cellar, pulling the trapdoor closed above them just as torchlight flickered through the windows. The cellar was pitch black and smelled of damp earth and preserved roots. Noura could feel the vampire's cold body pressed against hers in the confined space. She held her breath as heavy boots stomped overhead. "Nothing but a dead nigger witch," a gruff voice announced. "Looks like something got to her throat." "You think our runaway did this?" another voice asked, a harsh laugh. "That timid house girl? Nah, probably wild dogs or a panther. But she might have been headed here for help." "Let's burn this devil place," the first voice suggested. "If she's hiding somewhere nearby, the fire'll drive her out." Noura's fingers dug into the earthen wall behind her. The vampire shifted slightly beside her, his breath non-existent even in this close proximity. "Nah, Caldwell wants us back before dawn. Said something about traders coming to look at new stock. We'll tell him the girl probably got taken by whatever killed the witch. Swamp took care of our problem for us." The boots moved away, the voices fading. Noura remained frozen, unable to trust that the danger had truly passed. Only when the sounds of the search party had disappeared completely did she finally exhale. "They're gone," the vampire murmured, his voice strangely gentle. "For now. They'll come back," Noura whispered. "When they can't find my body, they'll know I'm still alive. Then we have until then to make our next move." Noura laughed bitterly. "We? There is no we. I don't even know what you are beyond the obvious, or who." A long silence followed. Then, "My name is Alexandru Constantine. I was born in Wallachia in the year 1462, and I am dying." Noura felt a chill that had nothing to do with the damp cellar. "That stake is not what is killing me. A stake through the heart would end me instantly. This," he shifted, wincing audibly, "this is a slow poison. The stake is made of rowan wood soaked in holy water and silver nitrate. It will take days, perhaps weeks, but it will kill me eventually. Can't you pull it out?" "Not without assistance, and even then, I would need to feed on human blood to heal such a wound. Animal blood merely sustains me. It cannot restore me." Noura felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "I won't let you feed on me." "I would not ask it," Alexandru said softly. "You saved me from dying alone in the marsh. That is more kindness than I deserve." Something in his voice, resignation perhaps, or genuine gratitude, made Noura reach out in the darkness. Her fingers found his face, tracing features that felt human yet somehow too perfect, too sculpted. His skin was cold and smooth as marble. "Who did this to you?" "Hunters," he replied. "They tracked me from New Orleans. I had been careful, feeding only on cattle and swamp creatures, but one cannot hide forever, especially not when one has enemies as old and determined as mine." "Why didn't they finish you?" A soft, pained laugh. "Arrogance. They wanted me to suffer. The leader, a man named St. Clair, has hunted my kind for decades. He believes a quick death is too merciful." Noura found herself oddly moved by this creature's plight. Was it so different from her own? Hunted, wounded, with nowhere to turn. "Rest," she said finally. "We'll figure out what to do when night comes again." Hours passed in the dark cellar. Noura drifted in and out of a fitful sleep, her dreams filled with running, with the crack of whips and the howling of hounds. She woke fully when she felt Alexandru stirring beside her. "It's nearly sunset," he said, though how he could tell from the lightless cellar she couldn't guess. Noura pushed against the trapdoor. It opened easily, revealing the hut bathed in the golden glow of late afternoon. The air smelled of ash. The search party had set small fires in the surrounding marsh before departing, perhaps hoping to smoke her out or simply to send a message. "We need to move tonight," Noura said, climbing out and offering a hand to Alexandru. "The overseers will return, maybe with Master Caldwell himself." The vampire emerged from the cellar with difficulty, his movements stiff and unnatural. In the fading daylight, Noura could see the full extent of his deterioration. His once handsome face was gaunt, dark veins visible beneath his translucent skin. The wound around the stake had spread, black tendrils creeping up his torso like the roots of some parasitic plant. "You won't make it far like this," she observed. "I will manage." His tone suggested the conversation was closed. Noura began to search the hut, gathering anything that might be useful. Mama Juba had left behind a wealth of resources: dried herbs, strange amulets, jars of unidentifiable substances. Among them, Noura found a small knife with symbols etched into the blade, a pouch of what smelled like salt mixed with other spices, and a worn, leather-bound book filled with handwritten notes in a language she couldn't read. "Can you understand this?" she asked, showing Alexandru the book. He took it with trembling hands. "It's a grimoire, a witch's spellbook and journal." His eyes scanned the pages. Some is in Creole, some in older tongues, Latin, Yoruba. "Can any of it help you? Or us?" Alexandru turned another page, then stopped abruptly. "This," he traced the faded illustration of a ceremonial dagger piercing what appeared to be a heart. "This is curious. What is it?" "A ritual of binding, for protecting against supernatural predators." He looked up at her, his eyes reflecting the last rays of sunlight streaming through the window. "But it can be inverted, used not to bind a creature, but to bind a protector to the creature." Noura frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," Alexandru said, his voice taking on an intensity that hadn't been there before, "that there might be a way for both of us to survive what's coming, but it would require a sacrifice from you that I have no right to ask." "What kind of sacrifice?" Noura asked, thinking of the bloodless body of the hare in the marsh. "Not your blood or your life," he said, seemingly reading her thoughts, "but your freedom, of a different kind than what binds you now." He gestured to the iron collar still encircling her neck. "The ritual would make you my protector, bound to me by magic older than myself. You would gain certain abilities, strength, heightened senses, resistance to injury, enough to defend both yourself and me. In return, you would be bound to my safety until I release you, or one of us dies." Noura stared at him, trying to comprehend what he was suggesting. "You want me to become your slave instead of Master Caldwell's?" Alexandru shook his head vehemently. "Not a slave, never that. a guardian, a shield. It is a sacred role in my culture, freely chosen and highly honored. But I would be bound to you, yes, though I swear by whatever shreds of humanity remain in me that I would release you once we are both safe." Noura walked to the hut's open doorway, gazing out at the swamp as night fell. Fireflies began to blink among the cypress trees, and somewhere an owl called. She thought of the plantation, of Master Caldwell's cold eyes and wandering hands, of the overseer's whip, and the future that awaited her if she were caught. She turned back to Alexandru, who watched her with an expression that might have been hope, mingled with shame at his own desperation. "What would this ritual require?" she asked finally. "Blood freely given, not taken. Spoken vows in an ancient tongue I would teach you. And this," he pointed to a symbol in the grimoire, a complex sigil resembling a star surrounded by a circle of thorns, "marked upon your skin." Noura touched her shoulder, where the overseer's brand had been seared into her flesh years ago. Another mark, another claim upon her body, but this one at least would be her choice. "If I agree to this, you must promise me something in return." "Name it," Alexandru said without hesitation. "When you are healed, you will help me find a way north, to freedom." A strange expression crossed his face. Surprise, perhaps, or admiration. "You have my word, though the path may be longer and stranger than you imagine." Outside, a night bird called 3 times, an unnatural pattern that made Alexandru tense. "Hunters," he whispered. "That's no bird." Noura made her decision. "Show me what I need to do." Alexandru opened the grimoire to the ritual page. "First, we need your blood mixed with earth from a grave." He glanced toward the cypress where they had buried Mama Juba. "And then?" Noura asked, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. Alexandru's eyes met hers, ancient and haunted. "And then, if we succeed, you will no longer be just Noura, runaway slave from Caldwell Plantation. You will be something this world has not seen in centuries." He reached for her hand, his cold fingers hovering just above her skin. "You will be the protector of a dying vampire, the shield between me and my enemies." As he spoke, torchlight appeared between the distant trees, accompanied by the faint sound of men's voices. St. Clair's hunters had returned to confirm their kill, and instead would find their prey prepared to fight. Noura took the knife from the table, its blade gleaming in the candlelight. "Then let us begin." The ritual unfolded under moonlight, filtering through the hut's broken roof. Noura knelt beside Alexandru, her heart pounding as she watched him mix her blood, drawn with a single slice across her palm, with dirt gathered from Mama Juba's fresh grave. The concoction darkened, seeming to absorb the meager light around it. "The words must be spoken precisely," Alexandru instructed, his voice strained with pain as he shifted to face her. "Repeat after me. Sanguis meum scutum tuum, vita mea defensio tua." Noura stumbled over the foreign syllables, but Alexandru nodded encouragingly. "Again, with conviction. You must mean it." She closed her eyes, steadying herself. When she spoke again, the Latin phrases rolled from her tongue with unexpected ease, as if some part of her had always known them. "Now," he said, dipping his finger into the blood-earth mixture, "I must mark you." Noura pulled her tattered dress off her shoulder, exposing the skin above her heart. Alexandru's cold fingertip traced the complex sigil from the grimoire, his touch light but deliberate. The mixture burned against her skin like ice, so cold it felt like fire. "Protector rise, bound but free," Alexandru intoned, his accent thickening as he slipped into what must have been his native tongue, before returning to words she could understand. "By blood and earth and ancient tree, stand between death and me." The sigil flared with sudden heat, and Noura gasped. A sensation flooded through her body, a rush of something not quite pain, not quite pleasure. Her vision blurred, then sharpened with alarming clarity. She could see every detail of the hut's darkened interior as if it were illuminated by midday sun. The distant voices of the approaching hunters became distinct, individual timbres she could separate and identify. "3 men!" she whispered, astonished at her own certainty, "armed with crossbows and something that smells of silver." Alexandru's eyes widened slightly. "It's working faster than I expected. You must help me remove the stake now before they reach us." Nura looked at the blackened wound in his side, doubt suddenly creeping in. "I don't know if I—" "You are stronger now," he assured her, "and I need my full strength if we're to survive." The torches were drawing closer. With a deep breath, Nura placed one hand on Alexandru's chest to stabilize him and gripped the protruding stake with the other. The wood felt unnaturally hot against her palm, but she no longer feared burning. With a single fluid motion, she pulled. Alexandru's scream cut through the night, but the stake came free in Nura's hand. Black ichor poured from the wound, but even as she watched, the flow slowed. Alexandru doubled over, his body convulsing. "Blood," he gasped. "I need—" Nura glanced toward the door. The hunters would have heard his cry. Without hesitation, she picked up the ritual knife and reopened the cut on her palm, holding her bleeding hand toward Alexandru's mouth. "Just enough to heal," she commanded, surprised at the authority in her voice. "No more." His eyes, now glowing crimson, fixed on hers with a mixture of hunger and restraint. He took her wrist with trembling hands and brought her palm to his lips. The sensation of his mouth on her wound was strangely intimate, sending currents of energy through her body. She could feel strength leaving her, but it was immediately replaced by something else, a fierce, protective instinct that made her hyper-aware of their surroundings. "They're here," she whispered, gently pulling her hand away. At the edge of the clearing, Alexandru straightened, the wound in his side already closing, though angry black veins still spread across his pale skin. "You need a weapon." Nura's gaze fell on the knife in her hand, but it seemed woefully inadequate. As if responding to her need, her eyes caught sight of a wooden staff leaning in the corner of the hut, something she hadn't noticed before. She crossed to it in 2 strides, her movements faster and more fluid than she'd ever experienced. The staff was made of dark, polished wood, symbols similar to those in the grimoire carved along its length. When her fingers closed around it, she felt a surge of recognition, as if the weapon had been made for her hand. "Mama Juba's staff," Alexandru murmured. "The swamp provides for its own." The door crashed open. A tall man in a long coat stood silhouetted against the night, a crossbow raised and aimed directly at Alexandru's heart. Behind him, 2 more figures moved to flank the entrance. "Well, well," the man drawled, his accent distinctly French. The great Alexandru Constantine, seeking refuge in a witch's hovel. His gaze shifted to Nura, narrowing with cruel amusement, and with a runaway slave, no less. "How the mighty have fallen. St. Clair," Alexandru acknowledged, his voice steady despite his weakened state. "Still hiding behind your toys and poisons, I see." The hunter stepped fully into the hut, his companions following. One was younger, perhaps 20, with the same sharp features as St. Clair, a son or nephew. The other was broad-shouldered and silent, a massive silver-bladed axe gripped in his hands. "Hiding!" St. Clair laughed. "I've tracked you across 3 continents, monster. There's nowhere left for you to run." Nura felt a strange sensation. Knowledge flowing into her mind that wasn't her own, images of European castles, of centuries of pursuit, of a vendetta born from some ancient grudge. Alexandru was sharing his memories with her through their new bond. "The girl is not part of this, Armand," Alexandru said, using the hunter's first name with deliberate familiarity. "Let her go." St. Clair's eyes flicked to Nura again, this time noticing the staff in her hands and the fresh sigil above her heart. His expression darkened. "What have you done, Constantine? You've bound her." He spat on the dirt floor. "And you dare speak of letting her go?" Nura stepped forward, positioning herself between Alexandru and the crossbow. "I chose this," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm no one's slave anymore. The younger hunter scoffed. A nigger girl who can speak properly. How charming. Rage flashed through Nura, hot and sudden. She felt Alexandru's hand on her shoulder, a silent warning. But her newfound senses were already alert to every potential movement in the room. The slight tension in St. Clair's trigger finger, the way the axe-wielder shifted his weight to his forward foot, preparing to charge. "What do you want, St. Clair?" Alexandru asked, his tone diplomatic, despite the obvious danger. "You've hunted me for decades. You've driven me from every sanctuary. Is this endless chase truly what Gerard would have wanted?" At the mention of the name, St. Clair's composure cracked. "Don't you dare speak his name!" he snarled, his finger tightening on the trigger. Nura moved without thinking. The staff in her hands became an extension of her body as she swung it upward, knocking the crossbow just as it fired. The bolt embedded itself in the ceiling with a dull thud. In the same fluid motion, she pivoted and struck the younger hunter across the face, sending him sprawling. The axe-wielder lunged, his weapon arcing toward Alexandru. Nura intercepted the blow with her staff, the impact sending vibrations up her arms, but the wood held where ordinary timber would have splintered. She pushed back with strength that surprised even her, forcing the larger man to stumble. St. Clair had already reloaded, his movements practiced and swift. "Enough games," he growled, aiming again at Alexandru. "Your pet can't protect you forever." "She doesn't have to," Alexandru replied. With blinding speed, he seized the back of Nura's dress and pulled her down as he lunged forward, past the crossbow's aim. His hand closed around Saint Clair's throat, lifting the hunter off his feet with preternatural strength. The younger hunter scrambled for a weapon, but Nura was on him in an instant, the butt of her staff striking his temple with calculated force. He collapsed, unconscious but alive. The axe-wielder charged again, but this time Alexandru intercepted him, moving with the restored grace of his kind. He caught the axe handle, wrenched it from the man's grasp, and delivered a blow that sent the brute crashing through the hut's wall into the night beyond. St. Clair, still dangling from Alexandru's grip, clawed at the vampire's wrist. "Kill me, then," he wheezed. "Prove what a monster you truly are." Alexandru's eyes blazed, his fangs fully extended. For a moment, Nura thought he would tear the hunter's throat out. Instead, he brought St. Clair's face close to his own. "I am not the monster here, Armand. I never was." He dropped the hunter unceremoniously to the floor. St. Clair gasped for air, his hand moving surreptitiously to his coat. Nura sensed the danger an instant before it materialized. A hidden flintlock pistol. She swept the staff in a low arc that connected with St. Clair's wrist, the crack of breaking bone echoing in the small space. The pistol discharged harmlessly into the dirt. Alexandru looked at Nura with something like amazement. "Your reflexes are extraordinary. I can feel everything," she replied, glancing around the destroyed hut. "Every movement, every intention. It's overwhelming." A groan from the doorway interrupted them. The axe-wielder was stirring, and beyond him, the distant sound of dogs barking carried through the swamp. "Caldwell's men," Nura whispered. "They heard the gunshot." Alexandru nodded grimly. "We need to leave, now." St. Clair, cradling his broken wrist, laughed bitterly. "Run all you want, Constantine. There's nowhere on this continent you can hide. The Order has eyes everywhere." "The Order," Nura repeated, another piece of knowledge filtering through her bond with Alexandru. A secret society of hunters, generations dedicated to eradicating his kind. Alexandru hesitated, looking down at the fallen hunter. "Why, Armand? It's been 60 years. Gerard made his choice when he came to me that night. He was 16, St. Clair spat. "A child you corrupted and destroyed. He was dying," Alexandru countered softly. "The consumption would have taken him within months. I offered him a choice." "A false choice," St. Clair interrupted. "Eternal damnation or the grave. Some mercy." Nura felt the conflict within Alexandru through their bond. Grief, regret, but no guilt. The memory of a young man, beautiful and frail, looking up at him with pleading eyes. The memory of that same young man, turning away years later, unable to bear what he had become. "We need to go," she urged, touching Alexandru's arm. The barking was growing louder. Alexandru nodded, tearing his gaze from St. Clair. He gathered a few items from the hut, the grimoire, a small pouch of herbs, a cloak hanging by the door. Noura retrieved a canvas sack, filling it with provisions from Mama Juba's stores. As she moved to the door, her eyes fell on the iron collar still encircling her neck. "Wait," she said, turning to St. Clair. "You carry tools for killing his kind. Do you have something that can cut metal?" The hunter glared at her, but said nothing. Alexandru moved to the younger hunter's unconscious form, searching his pockets and belt. "Here," he said, producing a small pry-bar with a sharpened edge. "This might work." Noura bent her head, exposing the collar's locking mechanism. Alexandru worked the tool into the gap, applying pressure until the metal groaned and finally snapped. The collar fell away, revealing raw, chafed skin beneath. The sensation of the heavy iron leaving her neck after 3 years was indescribable, like drawing her first full breath. She touched the tender flesh, eyes stinging with unbidden tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Alexandru's expression softened momentarily. "Freedom suits you, Noura." A crash from outside jolted them back to urgency. They slipped through the broken wall into the swamp's darkness, leaving the hunters behind. The night embraced them as they moved deeper into the wetlands, Noura leading with her newfound senses guiding their path. She could see clearly in the darkness now, could smell the distinct differences between stagnant water and the flowing channels that would lead them away from danger. The baying of hounds faded as they crossed a deep stream, Alexandru helping her navigate the treacherous current. "Where are we going?" she asked as they paused on a small island of relatively dry land. "North," Alexandru replied, his gaze distant. "There's a city, New York. I have connections there, other individuals like myself who live in secret among humans. They can help us reach Europe." "Europe?" Noura stopped, staring at him. "I meant to find freedom in the northern states or Canada. I can't go to Europe." Alexandru's expression was unreadable in the darkness. "The bond between us is not easily broken, Noura. The ritual we performed, it's ancient and powerful. If we separate too far, it could kill us both." "You said you would release me once we were safe," she reminded him, anger rising in her chest. "And I will honor that promise," he assured her. "But the ritual requires specific conditions to be undone. Conditions we won't find in the American wilderness." He hesitated, then added, "And Saint Clair was right about one thing. The Order has eyes everywhere in this country. We would never stop running." Noura felt trapped again, despite her newfound strength. "So I've exchanged one master for another after all." Alexandru flinched as if struck. "Is that what you think? That I am your master now? What else should I think? You bind me to you with magic. Tell me we can't be separated, that I must follow you across an ocean." Her voice broke. "How is that freedom?" Alexandru was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was soft with regret. "You're right to question me, to doubt my intentions." He moved closer, not touching her but meeting her eyes directly. "I've lived nearly 4 centuries, Noura. In that time, I've been both victim and monster, slave and master. I've seen empires rise and fall, watched humans commit atrocities that make my feeding habits seem merciful by comparison." He gestured to the swamp around them. "This country was built on the broken bodies of people who looked like you. I've watched it happen over centuries, the same cruelty, different justifications. I have no illusions about offering you perfect freedom. But I swear to you, on whatever shred of humanity remains in me, that I will never treat you as they have." Noura studied his face, finding no deception there. Through their bond she sensed only truth, and something else, a profound loneliness that echoed her own. "Tell me about this ritual," she said finally. "How do we undo it?" Alexandru seemed relieved at the change of subject. "It requires the blood of the original caster, myself. freely given under the full moon. And it must be performed on consecrated ground. A church? Yes, but one with significant age and power. There are several in Europe that would suffice. He hesitated. The undoing is dangerous, Nura. The power that now flows between us will not be easily severed. Before she could respond, a sound caught her attention, the soft splash of something moving through water nearby. Her heightened senses focused instantly on the source, a figure wading through the marsh about 50 yards away. "Someone's coming," she whispered. Alexandru tensed beside her, scanning the darkness. "Hunter or overseer?" Nura concentrated, sorting through the sensory information flooding her awareness. The figure moved differently than either, more deliberate, almost ritualistic. And there was something else, a scent like herbs and smoke. "Neither," she replied, a strange certainty settling over her. "It's familiar somehow." As if summoned by her words, the figure emerged into a patch of moonlight. It was a woman, elderly but straight-backed, her dark skin wrinkled like ancient parchment, her white hair wrapped in a faded red cloth. She wore a simple dress covered by a shawl, decorated with shells and bones that clinked softly as she moved. Alexandru hissed in surprise. "Impossible!" The old woman raised a hand in greeting, her eyes finding them unerringly in the darkness. "Nothing impossible about death, vampire," she called, her voice strong despite her apparent age. "Just another doorway for those who know how to use it." Recognition struck Nura like lightning. "Mama Juba!" The woman's weathered face creased in a smile. "What's left of her, child?" She continued forward, stopping a few yards away. "You took my grimoire." "Good. Wouldn't have left it if I didn't mean for someone to find it." Alexandru moved protectively closer to Nura. "How are you here? We buried your body." "Body's still there. Don't you worry," Mama Juba replied with a dismissive wave. "This just borrowed time. The lower grant me 3 days to finish my business before I cross over proper." Nura had heard slaves speak of such things, spirits lingering after death, unfinished tasks keeping them tethered to the living world. She'd never believed it until now. "You knew we would come," she said, understanding dawning. "You left the grimoire, the staff. You planned this." Mama Juba nodded. "Seen you in my dreams for months, child. You and him both." She pointed a gnarled finger at Alexandru. "Old blood and new strength bound together against what's coming." "What is coming?" Alexandru asked, his voice tense. The old woman's expression darkened. "Change, war, death on a scale even you ain't seen, vampire." She turned to Nura. "And you, girl, you stand at the crossroads now. Protector ain't just a title. It's a calling older than this land." Nura felt the weight of the staff in her hand, suddenly aware of its significance. "I didn't ask for this calling." "Few ever do," Mama Juba replied with a hint of sympathy. "But the spirits chose you all the same. Been watching you since you was brought to these parts. Strong spirit, old soul." She reached into her shawl and produced a small object, a pendant on a leather cord. "Take this. Hide it well." She held it out to Nura, who accepted it cautiously. The pendant was made of bone, carved with the same symbol now marked above Nura's heart. At its center sat a small red stone that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. "What is it?" Nura asked. "Protection," Mama Juba answered. "And something more, blood memory. Wear it when the time comes and you'll know what to do." "When what time comes?" Alexandru demanded, his patience visibly thinning. The old woman ignored him, her eyes fixed on Nura. "Head north, but not too far. Find the crossroads outside Bayou Vermilion. Look for a man named Dr. Jack. He'll help you reach the next waypoint." Distant voices carried through the swamp. Caldwell's men, closer now. Mama Juba's head turned sharply toward the sound. "They followed my spirit trail. Clever bastards must have a charm worker with them." She gestured urgently. "Go now. East path leads to the old Spanish road. Follow it north till sunrise." Nura hesitated, a dozen questions burning in her mind. "Why are you helping us?" Mama Juba's face softened momentarily. "Because long ago, I made a choice like yours. Bound myself to something I didn't fully understand to escape chains of a different kind. Her gaze shifted to Alexandru. Keep her safe, blood drinker. She's more important than either of you know. Before either could respond, the old woman turned and walked directly into the deepest part of the swamp. Within seconds, her figure dissolved into the mist, like smoke dispersing in wind. "Was that real?" Noura whispered, clutching the bone pendant. Alexandru looked troubled. "Too real. I've encountered spirits before, but never one with such clarity of purpose." He eyed the pendant warily. "Be careful with that. Objects given by the dead often carry prices of their own." Noura slipped the cord around her neck, tucking the pendant beneath her tattered dress. The moment it touched her skin, a strange warmth spread through her chest, and for an instant she glimpsed flashes of unfamiliar places, stone circles in dense forests, moonlight rituals, women with staffs like hers standing guard over ancient thresholds. The vision passed as quickly as it had come. "We should go," she said, suddenly certain of their path. "The eastern trail is this way." As they moved through the swamp, Noura felt a curious shift in her relationship with Alexandru. The initial resentment of their bond was giving way to something more complex. Not trust, exactly, but a grudging partnership born of mutual need. He followed her lead without question, recognizing her superior knowledge of the terrain. By the time they reached the old Spanish road, little more than a dirt path cutting through the wilderness, the first hints of dawn were lightening the eastern sky. Alexandru's steps grew noticeably labored, his face contorted with discomfort. "We need shelter for you," Noura observed, scanning their surroundings. "Yes," he agreed, his normally smooth voice rough with strain. "The sun will rise soon. Even with your blood strengthening me, I cannot withstand direct sunlight." Noura spotted a dense copse of trees about a quarter-mile ahead. "There, we can rest for the day." They reached the small grove just as the first rays of sun breached the horizon. Alexandru practically collapsed beneath the thickest cluster of trees, his breathing labored, though he had no physiological need for air. Noura worked quickly, gathering fallen branches and broad leaves to create a makeshift shelter, reinforcing the natural canopy above. When she finished, Alexandru was safely ensconced in near-complete darkness. "Thank you," he murmured, watching her with hooded eyes. "Your adaptability is remarkable." Noura settled nearby, positioning herself where she could see both Alexandru and the road. "I've been adapting since they took me from my homeland at 13, she replied without self-pity. "You learn to survive or you die." Alexandru was quiet for a moment. "Where was your homeland?" "A village near the Senegal River. My father was a storyteller, my mother a healer." She fingered the pendant around her neck. "I barely remember their faces now." "The pendant might help with that," Alexandru said unexpectedly. "Blood memory stones are rare but powerful. They can unlock what seems forgotten." Noura glanced down at the red stone. "How do I use it?" "Hold it while you sleep. Think of what you wish to remember." His voice grew fainter as exhaustion, the vampire's daylight dormancy, overtook him. "But be careful. Memories cut both ways." His eyes closed, his body becoming utterly still in the unnatural sleep of his kind. Noura watched him for a moment, struck by the vulnerability of this immortal being. In slumber, the centuries seemed to fall away from his face, revealing the man he must have been before his transformation. Despite her own exhaustion, Noura maintained her vigil, staff across her lap, pendant warm against her skin. Beyond their small shelter, the Louisiana wilderness came alive with morning sounds, birds calling, insects buzzing, the occasional splash of something moving through distant water. She closed her eyes briefly, meaning only to rest them, but the pendant pulsed against her chest. Sleep claimed her instantly, pulling her into dreams more vivid than any she'd experienced before. She stood in a village of round huts, golden sunlight bathing everything in warm light. Children played nearby, their laughter achingly familiar. A woman sang as she ground grain between stones, the melody stirring memories Noura had thought lost forever. "Noura!" a deep voice called. She turned to see a tall man approaching, his face breaking into a wide smile. "My daughter, come, I have a new story to share." "Father," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. Before she could reach him, the scene shifted. The village was burning, screams replacing laughter, the crack of muskets and the clash of steel drowning out song. White men dragged people from huts, chained them together in long lines. Her mother fell, blood blooming on her chest from a musket ball. Her father fought until 3 men beat him to the ground. And then Noura was running, a child again, terror lending speed to her legs, only to be caught, thrown to the ground, a boot pressing into her back as rough hands secured iron around her wrists. The dream changed again. She was on a ship, packed so tightly she couldn't move, the stench of human misery suffocating her. Faces appeared and disappeared. People who had died during the crossing, their bodies simply lifted and thrown overboard. Then, mercifully, other memories surfaced. Her grandmother teaching her to identify healing plants, her father's stories under starlit skies, her mother's hands braiding her hair while singing songs of ancient heroes and clever tricksters. Knowledge she had suppressed, skills she had been forced to forget, all rising to the surface of her consciousness. When she finally woke, tears streaked her face, but her mind felt clearer than it had in years. The pendant was cool against her skin now, its purpose apparently fulfilled. Beyond their shelter, the sun was beginning its westward descent. A few more hours, and they could continue their journey. Noura looked at Alexandru's still form, understanding for the first time the full weight of what she had committed to. She was bound not just to a vampire, but to a new path that would take her far from everything she had planned. North to freedom had been her only goal for years. Now, her destiny seemed to be expanding in directions she couldn't predict. She touched the sigil above her heart, feeling its power pulse in time with her heartbeat. Whatever came next, she was no longer just Noura the runaway slave. She was Noura the protector, and something told her that role would demand more from her than she yet understood. As the sun sank lower, casting long shadows through the trees, she gripped her staff and watched the road, waiting for night to fall and their journey to continue. In the distance, she could have sworn she heard Mama Juba's voice carried on the wind, whispering words that sounded like both blessing and warning. "The crossroads await, child. Choose your path carefully." Night had fully settled by the time Alexandru stirred. Noura watched as consciousness returned to him, a process more akin to a machine awakening than a person waking from sleep. His eyes opened suddenly, already alert, the irises glowing faintly red in the darkness. "You've been crying," he observed, his voice stronger than it had been before his rest. Noura touched her cheeks, surprised to find them still damp. "The pendant, it showed me everything. My village, my family, the raid, the ships." She took a shuddering breath. "Things I had forced myself to forget." Alexandru sat up, studying her face with an intensity that might have unsettled her days ago, but now felt familiar. Blood memories are powerful medicine. They can heal old wounds, or reopen them. Both, I think. She tucked the pendant back beneath her dress. "We should move. I can hear patrols on the main road to the west." They gathered their meager supplies and set off northward, keeping to the shadows of the old Spanish trail. Noura led the way, her enhanced senses allowing her to detect danger long before it approached. The night air was heavy, with the scent of rain, though the sky remained clear and star-filled above them. "Tell me about Dr. Jack," Noura said after they had walked in silence for nearly an hour. "Do you know him?" Alexandru's expression darkened slightly. "I know of him. He's what my kind call a crossroads keeper, part mystic, part merchant. He deals in information, safe passage, and occasionally darker commodities." "Souls?" Noura asked, surprising herself with her immediate leap to the supernatural. A hint of a smile touched Alexandru's lips. "You adapt quickly to this new reality." "Yes, Some say he trades in souls, or at least in bindings that might as well be soul trades. Can we trust him? Trust is a strong word for someone like Jack. Alexandru stepped over a fallen log with preternatural grace. But he honors his contracts to the letter, if not always in spirit. Mama Juba would not have sent us to him without reason. The mention of the witch sobered them both. They continued northward, the landscape gradually changing from swampland to denser forest. By midnight, they reached a small creek where they stopped to rest and drink. As Nura knelt by the water, her reflection caught her attention. The changes in her were subtle but unmistakable. Her eyes seemed to hold a new awareness, her posture more confident despite her ragged appearance. The sigil above her heart occasionally pulsed with a faint light, visible through her thin dress. "What's happening to me?" she asked quietly. "This is more than just enhanced senses. I feel different." Alexandru approached, stopping a respectful distance away. "The protector bond is changing you, as it has changed all who bore the mark before you. Your body is adapting to channel the power needed to defend your bonded. There were others before me, many over the centuries, warriors, scholars, healers, all bound to vampires of my lineage." He hesitated. "Most lived extraordinary lives, far beyond what their birth would have ordinarily allowed." "And how did they die?" Nura asked pointedly. Alexandru looked away. "Some of old age, after being released from service. Others," he trailed off. "In battle," Nura finished for him. "Protecting their vampires." "Yes." His voice was barely audible. "The bond ensures your instinct to protect me will be nearly irresistible in moments of true danger." Nura absorbed this information with a growing sense of unease. Before she could question him further, her heightened senses detected movement in the trees ahead. Not human, but something large. She raised a hand for silence, reaching for her staff with the other. A low growl emanated from the darkness, followed by the heavy pad of paws on forest floor. From between two massive oaks emerged a beast the likes of which Nura had never seen. A wolf nearly the size of a calf, its fur black as pitch, eyes gleaming with unnatural intelligence. Alexandru tensed beside her. "Lupul Mort," he whispered in his native tongue. "Death wolf." The creature stalked forward, its focus fixed on Alexandru rather than Nura. It growled again, the sound vibrating through the night air. "Is it like you?" Nura asked, gripping her staff tighter. "No, something else entirely. A servant of the Order, bound to hunters through dark rituals." Alexandru slowly shifted into a defensive stance. "They use them to track our kind." As if confirming his words, the wolf threw back its head and released a howl that echoed through the forest, a signal to distant masters. In the same moment, it launched itself toward Alexandru, jaws open to reveal fangs that gleamed in the moonlight. Nura moved without conscious thought, the protector bond flaring to life within her. She intercepted the beast mid-leap, her staff connecting with its ribs with enough force to change its trajectory. The wolf crashed into the underbrush with a yelp of pain. "It's alerting the hunters," Alexandru warned. "We need to silence it quickly." The wolf recovered with supernatural speed, circling them now, looking for an opening. Nura felt her body responding to the threat with heightened awareness, the staff becoming an extension of her will. When the beast lunged again, she was ready. This time her strike caught the wolf across the muzzle, drawing blood that steamed in the cool night air. The creature snarled in rage but retreated a few paces, reassessing its prey. Alexandru moved in perfect synchronization with Nura, the bond between them allowing for unspoken coordination. "Its heart," Alexandru murmured, "between the front legs. Nothing else will kill it." The wolf charged again, this time feinting toward Nura before changing direction to Alexandru. The vampire was ready, catching the beast's forelegs, but the wolf's momentum drove them both to the ground. They rolled in the dirt, a blur of motion too fast for ordinary human eyes to track. Nura saw her opening when the wolf pinned Alexandru, jaws snapping inches from his throat. She drove the end of her staff into the creature's side with all her strength, feeling it pierce flesh and bone to find the heart beneath. The wolf convulsed, a terrible human-like scream escaping its throat before collapsing atop Alexandru. Silence fell over the forest. Alexandru pushed the dead wolf aside, its body already beginning to deteriorate at an unnatural rate, flesh sloughing away to reveal bone that crumbled to dust. "The hunters won't be far behind," he said, rising and brushing dirt from his clothes. The death wolf was just the vanguard. They abandoned the creek, pushing northward at a grueling pace. Nura found her enhanced body could match Alexandru's speed without tiring, another gift of the protector bond. By dawn, they had covered miles of wilderness and reached the edge of what appeared to be long-abandoned farmland. "Bayou Vermilion should be just beyond that ridge," Alexandru said, gesturing to a distant tree line. "We'll need to find shelter for the day, then locate the crossroads at nightfall." They took refuge in a collapsed barn, its roof still intact enough to shield Alexandru from the deadly sunlight. As they settled into their temporary sanctuary, Nura noticed Alexandru watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "What is it?" she asked. "You've taken to the protector role with remarkable ease," he observed. "Most struggle against the bond initially, fight the new instincts." Nura considered this. "Perhaps I've spent too many years being told what I am and what I'm not. This, at least, was my choice. However uninformed it was," Alexandru agreed. "And I remain in your debt for that choice." He paused, seeming to debate whether to continue. "There's something you should know about the ritual. Something I didn't tell you before." A knot of apprehension formed in Nura's stomach. "What?" "The bond. It's changing you in ways beyond the physical. The longer we remain connected, the more you'll begin to take on certain aspects of my nature." Nura straightened, alarmed. "I'm becoming a vampire." "No," he quickly clarified. "But you are becoming something neither fully human nor vampire. Your lifespan will extend, your need for sleep and sustenance will decrease, and you'll develop a sensitivity to blood, the ability to sense it, to read memories from it as you did with the pendant, perhaps eventually even to draw power from it." The implications settled over her like a cold shadow. "So even if we break the bond, you'll never be fully human again," Alexandru finished softly. "I should have told you before the ritual. It was wrong to withhold this." Nura should have felt angry, betrayed. Instead, she found herself strangely calm. "Would it have changed my decision? I was facing death or worse if captured. At least this way, I have a chance at some kind of future." Alexandru studied her, his ancient eyes filled with something like wonder. "You continue to surprise me, Nura." They lapsed into silence as the sun climbed higher in the sky. Alexandru retreated to the darkest corner of the barn, his body growing still as daylight dormancy overtook him. Nura kept watch, allowing herself only brief moments of meditation rather than true sleep. During one such moment, her hand strayed to the pendant around her neck. Instantly, she was pulled into another memory, not her own this time, but older, stranger. A circle of women in animal skins, dancing around a standing stone, slick with fresh blood. A pale figure watched from the shadows, its eyes reflecting firelight like a predator's. The vision shifted. The same pale figure, a woman, lay on a stone altar, her body racked with some terrible agony. One of the dancers approached, a knife in hand. She cut her own palm and pressed the bleeding wound to the vampire's lips. Immediately, the mark of the protector bloomed on the dancer's chest. Nura gasped as the vision released her. She understood now what Mama Juba had meant by old blood and new strength. The protector bond wasn't some recent vampiric innovation. It was ancient, predating even Alexandru's time. The ritual they had performed had roots stretching back to prehistory, to the very first encounters between humans and the immortal predators who lived among them. When twilight finally came, Nura roused Alexandru with a gentle touch to his shoulder. He awakened instantly, his gaze finding hers with uncanny precision in the dim light. "Something's changed," he observed. "You've seen something." Briefly, Noura described her vision. Alexandru listened with growing intensity, his expression shifting from interest to concern. "The first protector bond," he murmured when she finished, "created not to guard a vampire, but to save one." He shook his head. "I knew the ritual was ancient, but not that ancient. This changes everything." "How?" Noura asked. "Because if what you saw is true, then the purpose of the bond isn't what I was taught. It's not about creating a shield or a weapon. It's about balance, symbiosis." He rose, pacing the small space. "My maker never told me this. He described the protector ritual as a way to enslave a human guardian, nothing more." "Your maker sounds like a cruel man," Noura observed. Alexandru laughed bitterly. "Cruel doesn't begin to describe Vlad Dracul. He reveled in suffering, believed it purified the soul." The name sent a chill through Noura. Even in the slave quarters, stories of the blood-drinking count had circulated, brought by European sailors and interpreted through African spiritual frameworks. "We should go," she said, eager to change the subject. "The crossroads await." They slipped out of the barn into the deepening twilight, making their way toward the ridge Alexandru had identified earlier. Beyond it lay a wide, slow-moving river, the Vermilion, its waters dark with sediment and tangled vegetation. Following the riverbank northward, they eventually came upon what could only be the crossroads Mama Juba had mentioned, a place where two dirt roads intersected, one following the river, the other cutting eastward through dense forest. At the center of the crossroads stood an ancient oak, its massive trunk scarred with symbols carved by generations of unknown hands. "Now what?" Noura whispered, her enhanced senses detecting nothing but ordinary night creatures in the vicinity. "We wait," Alexandru replied, approaching the oak. "Crossroads magic requires patience." They stood in silence as full darkness descended. Minutes stretched into an hour, then two. Noura began to wonder if they had misunderstood Mama Juba's directions when a sound caught her attention, the rhythmic clop of hooves approaching from the eastern road. Into the crossroads rode a figure on horseback, silhouetted against the night sky. The rider dismounted with fluid grace, leading a handsome black stallion toward the oak where they waited. As he came closer, details resolved in Noura's enhanced vision. A tall man, with skin the color of polished mahogany, dressed in an immaculate black suit that would have looked more appropriate in a New Orleans parlor than the wilderness. A silver-tipped cane dangled from one hand, and atop his head sat a top hat adorned with feathers and small bones. "Well, well," the man called, his voice carrying a hint of accent Noura couldn't place. "What have we here?" "A vampire and his protector, far from safe harbor." He stopped a few paces away, tipping his hat. "Dr. Jack, at your service, though I suspect you already knew that." Alexandru stepped forward. "Mama Juba sent us to find you." Dr. Jack's expression sobered. "Ah, the old witch has passed on then. I felt the disturbance, but wasn't certain." He sighed, genuinely mournful. "A great loss. We were acquainted for many years." "She said you could help us reach the next waypoint," Noura interjected. Dr. Jack turned his attention to her, his eyes, golden as a cat's, widening slightly. My, she's new to the binding, yet already so strong." He circled Noura, examining her with undisguised interest. "Remarkable potential. Your lineage must be exceptional, girl." "Her name is Noura," Alexandru said sharply, "and we seek safe passage northward." "Of course you do," Dr. Jack replied, returning his attention to the vampire. "The Order's hunters snap at your heels, and the plantation owner offers a handsome reward for his runaway property." He tapped his cane against the ground. "Fortunately for you both, I'm in the business of solving such problems." "At what price?" Alexandru asked warily. Dr. Jack smiled, revealing teeth filed to points. "Direct, aren't we? I appreciate that." He leaned on his cane. My price is threefold, as tradition demands. First, a memory from each of you, something precious, not to be taken now, but collected when you reach your destination. Noura frowned. You want us to forget something important? Not forget, merely share. I collect memories like some collect fine wines, to be experienced, savored, and preserved. His golden eyes glinted. Second, a task performed at the next crossroads you encounter, a simple delivery, nothing more. And third, Alexandru prompted. Dr. Jack's smile faded, replaced by an expression of uncharacteristic gravity. The third price is this. When the time comes, and the choice stands before you, choose life over vengeance, both of you. The cryptic nature of the final demand left them momentarily speechless. Noura glanced at Alexandru, who looked equally perplexed. These terms are unusual, Alexandru finally said. These are unusual times, Dr. Jack countered. War looms on the horizon, vampire. Not just the human conflict brewing between North and South, but another war, one fought in shadows between powers older than this young nation. He pointed his cane at the sigil, visible through Noura's dress. That mark places you both at the center of coming events, whether you wish it or not. A chill ran down Noura's spine. What events? Instead of answering, Dr. Jack turned and whistled sharply. From the darkness emerged a second horse, smaller than his magnificent stallion, but strong and well-kept. Your transport, he announced. She'll carry you both to the Mississippi, where a riverboat captain named LaRoche will be expecting you. He'll take you as far as Cairo, Illinois. You haven't answered her question, Alexandru insisted. Dr. Jack fixed them with a penetrating stare. Because the answer would change your path, and your path is already written. He gestured to the eastern road. 3 miles along this trail, you'll find a cabin. Rest there until tomorrow night, then continue to the river. LaRoche departs at midnight. He mounted his stallion in one fluid motion. Do we have an agreement? Your memories and the task in exchange for safe passage. Alexandru looked to Noura, unexpectedly deferring to her judgment. The realization that he was treating her as an equal, not a servant or a tool, struck her powerfully. We agree, she said firmly. But I want to know what memory you'll take. Dr. Jack's laugh echoed through the crossroads. Bold. I like her, Constantine. He tipped his hat again. From you, girl, I'll take your first glimpse of the ocean from the slave ship, that moment of terrible beauty amidst horror. From the vampire, I'll take the memory of his human death. Alexandru flinched visibly, but nodded his acceptance. Excellent, Dr. Jack exclaimed. Our contract is sealed. He tossed something to Noura, who caught it reflexively, a small cloth pouch. For the delivery, open it only at the next crossroads you encounter after Cairo. With that, he wheeled his horse around and galloped back the way he had come, vanishing into the darkness with unnatural speed. Noura stared after him, then looked down at the pouch in her hand. It was lightweight, sealed with wax, pressed with a symbol she didn't recognize. Can we trust him? She asked. Not entirely, Alexandru admitted, but Crossroads bargains are binding in ways even vampires respect. He'll fulfill his part. They approached the waiting horse, which stood patiently as Alexandru helped Noura mount before swinging up behind her. As they rode eastward toward the promised cabin, Noura couldn't shake the feeling that Dr. Jack had known far more about them, about her, than he should have. What did he mean about war? She asked as they rode. And why would he care whether we choose life or vengeance? Alexandru's arms tightened slightly around her waist. I don't know. But Crossroads entities rarely make demands without purpose. He paused. Whatever lies ahead, it seems our paths are more intertwined than either of us anticipated. They rode in silence after that, each lost in their own thoughts. The horse knew the way, following the trail without guidance. When they finally spotted the cabin, a sturdy structure nestled in a small clearing, both sighed with relief. As they dismounted, however, Noura froze. Her enhanced senses detected what Alexandru's had not. The cabin was not empty. Someone waited inside, someone whose heartbeat pulsed with anticipation. "We're not alone," she whispered, reaching for her staff. Alexandru tensed beside her, his fangs extending instinctively. Dr. Jack may have omitted some details of our arrangement. The cabin door swung open, spilling warm lamplight into the clearing. In the doorway stood a figure Nura recognized instantly, sending ice through her veins. "Well now," Master Caldwell's voice rang out, as pleasant as if greeting guests at his plantation. "I've been expecting you, Nura, though I admit your companion is a surprise." The unexpected confrontation with Master Caldwell sent Nura's mind reeling with panic, but her body, now attuned to danger through the protector bond, remained perfectly still. She felt Alexandru's presence behind her, a cold certainty in the warm southern night. "I must say, finding you in such unusual company was not what I anticipated," Caldwell continued, stepping fully into the doorway. He held no weapon that Nura could see, but his confidence suggested he wasn't alone. "Though it does explain the peculiar reports I've received." Alexandru moved slightly forward, positioning himself beside Nura rather than behind her. "This meeting was arranged by Dr. Jack," he stated flatly. "I assume you're part of the arrangement?" Caldwell's eyes narrowed, focusing properly on Alexandru for the first time. Something in the vampire's appearance, his unnatural stillness perhaps, or the predatory gleam in his eyes, caused the plantation owner to take an involuntary step backward. "What manner of man are you?" Caldwell demanded, his southern drawl sharpening with unease. "I am no man at all," Alexandru replied with deadly softness. "And Nura is under my protection." A flash of movement at the cabin's window caught Nura's attention, a second figure shifting in the shadows. Her staff was in her hands before she consciously thought to reach for it, her body responding to the threat with preternatural speed. "You're not alone," she said to Caldwell, her voice steady despite the hatred burning in her chest at the sight of the man who had tormented her for years. Caldwell's face twisted into a cruel smile. "Neither are you, it seems." He raised his hand, and torches flared to life around the clearing, revealing at least 6 armed men emerging from the surrounding trees. But it was the figure who stepped up behind Caldwell that chilled Nura to the bone. Armand St. Clair, his wrist now splintered but his eyes burning with the same fanatical hatred she remembered from the swamp. "Did you think a crossroads dealer would honor promises made to your kind, Constantine?" St. Clair called. "Dr. Jack has served the Order for centuries, delivering abominations like you into our hands." Alexandru tensed beside her, a low growl emanating from his chest. "Betrayal has a price, Hunter, one I've collected many times before." The standoff stretched for a long moment, the air thick with imminent violence. Through their bond, Nura could feel Alexandru calculating odds, measuring distances, preparing for battle. But they were outnumbered, potentially outmatched. Then impossibly Caldwell laughed. "This is all very dramatic," he drawled, "but perhaps unnecessary." He gestured expansively. "I didn't come here for a fight, but for a transaction." "Transaction?" Nura echoed, confused. St. Clair stepped forward, producing a folded document from inside his coat. "The Order has a proposition, one that benefits all parties." Alexandru's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Speak plainly, Hunter." "The witch's pendant," St. Clair said, pointing to the bulge visible beneath Nura's dress. "We want it. In exchange, Caldwell here has agreed to sign manumission papers for Nura." Nura's breath caught in her throat. Freedom, legal freedom, dangled before her like an impossible dream. "And what of Alexandru?" she asked, already knowing the answer. Caldwell waved dismissively. "Your companion is not my concern, though I gather he has unfinished business with Mr. St. Clair." "Unfinished indeed," St. Clair added, his voice tightening. "But the Order is willing to grant Constantine safe passage from Louisiana territory. One night's head start before we resume our hunt." Alexandru laughed, the sound devoid of humor. "Your generosity overwhelms me." "This is not generosity," St. Clair countered. "It's pragmatism. The pendant is worth more to us than your immediate destruction." Noura's hand crept to the bone pendant, warm against her skin. Through the protector bond, she sensed Alexandru's intense focus on the object, his ancient mind working through possibilities she could only dimly perceive. "Why?" Alexandru demanded. "What is this pendant that the Order would postpone a centuries-old vendetta?" St. Clair and Caldwell exchanged a glance that confirmed Noura's suspicion. They were unlikely allies, brought together only by mutual interest. "The blood key," St. Clair finally said, the words carrying weight even Noura could feel. The witch had one of the 3 blood keys. Alexandru stilled completely, a reaction that revealed more than words could. Whatever this blood key was, it clearly held significance beyond Noura's understanding. "Impossible," Alexandru whispered. "The keys were lost centuries ago, yet one hangs around your protector's neck," St. Clair replied. "The Order has sought them since the time of the Crusades. With it, we can locate the remaining 2. Noura's mind raced. The pendant Mama Juba had given her was clearly more important than she'd realized. Important enough for the Order to bargain rather than attack outright. Important enough for Dr. Jack to ensure it reached the next stage of whatever journey fate had placed her on. She looked at the manumission papers in St. Clair's hand. Legal freedom would mean she could travel openly, without fear of being captured and returned to slavery. It would mean the possibility of a normal life someday. "Give me the papers," she said abruptly. St. Clair extended them toward her. "A wise decision, girl." As Noura stepped forward, she felt Alexandru's alarm through their bond, his fear that she would surrender the pendant and with it, whatever power it contained. But underneath that fear, she sensed something deeper, respect for her choice, whatever it might be. She took the papers carefully, unfolding them to examine their contents by torchlight. The legal language was beyond her limited reading skills, but Caldwell's signature and seal at the bottom seemed genuine. "You understand," Caldwell said with false kindness, "that this only frees you, Noura, not your vampire friend." Noura looked up from the papers, meeting her former master's eyes directly for the first time in her life. The man who had beaten her, degraded her, treated her as property, now standing before her with the expectation that she would betray her new bond for the freedom he had unjustly withheld. With deliberate slowness, Noura folded the manumission papers and tucked them securely into her dress pocket. "I understand perfectly," she said, her voice carrying across the clearing. "I understand that you believe I would choose paper freedom over true loyalty." She stepped back to Alexandru's side. "I understand that you think even now that you know what I value and who I am." Confusion crossed Caldwell's face, followed quickly by anger. "You stupid girl, this is your only chance at—" "Freedom?" Noura interrupted, power flowing through her as she embraced her role fully for the first time. "I am already free. I freed myself the night I ran from your plantation. This paper merely acknowledges what is already true." She pulled the pendant from beneath her dress, letting it catch the torchlight. "And this stays with me." St. Clair's face contorted with rage. "Then you die with the vampire." He gestured sharply to his men, who raised their weapons, crossbows loaded with wooden bolts, pistols that likely contained silver shot. "Wait," Alexandru said suddenly, his voice carrying unnatural command. "You've made a critical error, Hunter." "And what might that be?" St. Clair sneered. "You've cornered a vampire at full strength with his protector beside him." Alexandru's eyes began to glow crimson, power emanating from him in palpable waves. "And you've forgotten what the bond truly means." Before St. Clair could respond, Alexandru grasped Noura's free hand. The moment their skin touched, energy surged between them, the full potential of the protector bond awakening as Alexandru channeled his immortal power into Noura's receptive form. The sigil on her chest flared with blinding light. Noura gasped as knowledge flooded her mind. Combat techniques from centuries past, the precise weaknesses of every weapon pointed at them, the inherent vulnerabilities of human anatomy. More than knowledge came power, strength beyond human limits, speed that would make her movements nearly invisible to mortal eyes. St. Clair must have recognized the danger, for he shouted, "Fire! Now!" The first crossbow bolt flew toward Alexandru's heart, but Noura's staff intercepted it mid-flight, shattering the wood to splinters. A second followed, then a third, each meeting the same fate as she moved with impossible speed, creating a barrier of motion around them both. The men with pistols fired, the reports deafening in the small clearing. Noura felt rather than saw the trajectories of the bullets, her body twisting to avoid some while her staff deflected others. One grazed her arm, drawing blood that shimmered strangely in the torchlight, but she felt no pain, only a cold determination to protect. "Run!" Caldwell shouted to his men, the plantation owner already backing toward the trees. But St. Clair stood his ground, drawing a silver dagger from his belt. "No more games, Constantine," the hunter growled. "This ends tonight." Alexandru released Noura's hand, the initial surge of power subsiding but leaving her permanently changed, stronger, faster, more dangerous than before. "Yes," he agreed quietly. "It does." What followed was a deadly dance. St. Clair lunged with the precision of a man who had spent decades hunting vampires, his blade singing through the air where Alexandru had stood a heartbeat before. The vampire moved like liquid shadow, always just beyond reach, leading St. Clair away from Noura as she dispatched the remaining hunters with efficient, non-lethal strikes. When only St. Clair remained, he found himself surrounded, Noura before him, Alexandru behind, the dark forest offering no escape. "You cannot win this, Armand," Alexandru said, using the hunter's first name again. "You never could." "I don't need to win," St. Clair spat, blood trickling from a cut on his temple. "I only need to ensure you lose." With shocking swiftness, he reversed his grip on the silver dagger and plunged it toward his own heart. Noura reacted without thinking, the staff knocking the blade from St. Clair's hand before it could find its mark. The hunter collapsed to his knees, his last gambit foiled. "Why?" he demanded, looking up at Noura with hatred and incomprehension. "Why save me? I would have died to destroy him." "Because that was Dr. Jack's third price," she realized aloud. "Choose life over vengeance, both of us." Alexandru approached slowly, standing over the defeated hunter. "For 60 years you've hunted me to avenge Gerard, but you never understood. He came to me willingly, Armand. He chose immortality over the slow death consumption offered him." "Lies," St. Clair whispered, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. "He left you not because of what I made him, but because of what you couldn't accept." Alexandru knelt, bringing himself to eye level with his ancient adversary. "His love for you." The hunter's face crumpled, decades of hatred giving way to the grief beneath. "He was everything to me." "I know," Alexandru said softly. "He knew too. That's why he left, to spare you watching him suffer, either from disease or from the blood hunger that would have driven him to hurt you." Silence fell over the clearing as the truth sank in. St. Clair's shoulders sagged, the fight draining from him completely. When he looked up again, his eyes held only exhaustion. "What happens now?" "Now," Noura said, lowering her staff, "we fulfill our bargain with Dr. Jack. We continue north." "And me?" St. Clair asked. Alexandru straightened. "You have a choice, Hunter. Continue this pointless crusade or find a new purpose. Either way, our paths part here." As if summoned by these words, the sound of hoofbeats approached from the forest. Dr. Jack emerged from the trees, his golden eyes reflecting the torchlight as he surveyed the scene with evident satisfaction. "Well done," he called, dismounting gracefully. "You passed the test." "Test?" Noura demanded, anger flaring. "You betrayed us," Dr. Jack tisked, tapping his cane against his boot. I did nothing of the sort. I delivered you precisely where you needed to be, to face precisely what you needed to face." He gestured to St. Clair. The hunter needed truth. Caldwell needed to relinquish his claim on you officially, not just in practice. His gaze shifted to the pendant. "And you, my dear, needed to choose the pendant willingly, understanding its value. The blood key," Alexandru said. "You knew what it was all along." "Of course." Dr. Jack approached, stopping respectfully outside Nura's defensive range. Mama Juba guarded it for decades, waiting for the right protector to carry it forward. His golden eyes fixed on Nura. "You, to what end?" she asked. "To restore balance," Dr. Jack replied simply. "The world teeters on the edge of darkness, not just the human war brewing in this divided nation, but a supernatural war that has raged in shadow for millennia. The three blood keys, when united, can seal the gates between worlds, prevent what's coming." Alexandru shook his head in disbelief. "Those are myths, legends told to frighten young vampires. All myths have roots in truth, old one." Dr. Jack turned to the east, where the faintest lightening of the sky suggested dawn approached. "Your riverboat awaits. LaRouche will not delay his departure." He snapped his fingers, and 2 fresh horses trotted into the clearing. "St. Clair has his own journey to begin. As for Caldwell..." A cold smile played across Dr. Jack's lips. "Let's just say his fortunes are about to change dramatically." Nura and Alexandru exchanged a glance, unspoken communication flowing through their bond. Whatever Dr. Jack's true motives, they had little choice but to continue the path before them. As they mounted the waiting horses, Nura touched the manumission papers in her pocket, her legal freedom secured, though it meant less to her now than it once had. She was becoming something beyond human law, beyond the categories that had defined and confined her. "North, then," she said to Alexandru, "to find the remaining keys." "And after?" he asked quietly, the question laden with meaning. Nura's hand found the pendant, warm against her palm. Through it, she sensed possibilities unfolding before her, a life longer than she had ever imagined, filled with wonders and dangers beyond reckoning, but not a life alone. "After?" she replied as they urged their horses toward the Mississippi and whatever destiny awaited. "We choose our own path, together or apart, but freely chosen." The sun's first rays broke over the horizon as they rode away from the clearing, from slavery, from vengeance, toward a future neither could fully envision, but both would face with the strength of their unlikely bond. Behind them, Dr. Jack watched their departure, his golden eyes reflecting more than mere torchlight as he whispered words only the wind would carry. "The protector rises. The balance begins. May the old powers have mercy on us all."